Hi, I am Jennifer Purcell, and welcome to my podcast, Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss, discover, and learn more about the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD and other learning challenges. I do have a website for this podcast, and it is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account for the podcast. They are all under the same name, which is Living with NLD. I also have a YouTube channel for the podcast, which can be found by Googling the title of the podcast, which is Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I would like to tell you about a nonprofit that I use for my research for this podcast. It is called the NVLD Project, and I use their blog for my research. They are a nonprofit that is based in New York and is trying to get NVLD back on the DSM, and they provide many resources for people with NVLD on their website. I'll provide you with the website for them in the podcast description. All proceeds from the ads on this podcast will be donated towards the NVLD project. Please feel free to explore the other topics on the podcast, and hopefully you will learn something new from them. I hope you enjoyed today's episodes.
My name is Julia, and I was identified as having nonverbal learning disorder, NVLD, which some people are now calling developmental visual spatial disorder, DVSD. I was also identified as having Asperger's, now called autism level 1, and those traits may be part of the NVLD. Scientists disagree on how to categorize. The term nonverbal learning disorder is phrased in the negative, and it means that the skills I am not naturally good at are not verbal. Therefore, the first strengths I'll mention are good verbal reasoning and a good verbal memory. I also require more time to learn certain skills because of various difficulties such as with visual spatial skills and processing speed. Unfortunately, sometimes when people notice this discrepancy, they assume the difficulties are from laziness. However, these challenges bring 3 strengths: planning, finding strategies that help other learners, and empathizing with those with similar challenges. I say planning because I know certain tasks take me longer to do, so I tend to avoid procrastinating. Instead, I plan and organize. The curb cut effect is when something that helps a disabled person helps a lot of people, because curb cuts for people who use wheelchairs are helpful for people who push babies in strollers. I have filmed teachers demonstrating hands-on skills, and the recording was helpful for the other students. I have sensory sensitivities, and once, when I was helping run a program for a group of children, I was the one who noticed that a little girl was not able to pay attention because she was afraid of a thunderstorm. This all makes me think of some words in a song called Anthem by Leonard Cohen. Ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.
How could I care about their new pop music or basketball when the music was okay, but basketball was just a bunch of jocks bouncing a ball around? I struggled through elementary and middle school with my unnamed shadow. The district had me on an IEP for my handwriting, but that was their only accommodation that they offered. They sent me to the special ed classroom to type up my work, and this was in the era of the early Apple IIe and really the first commercial desktop computers. I was one of the first in the Aurora School District to use the AlphaSmart portable keyboard, which was a device that lets you type at your desk, and it's kind of a proto laptop. When I was done with the work, I could plug it into a computer and download my work as a Word document. A strength of this accommodation was that it gave me the technical skills and flexibility I need as an adult to work with computers and new technology. In 6th grade, I almost failed math because my teachers could not read my work. But when I used the AlphaSmart, I was able to type my answers up and get to a passable point. It turns out that AlphaSmart actually bypassed my issues with dyscalculia as well. When I could type my math work up, I could keep my numbers straight and use the equation function in Microsoft Word to write out more complex formulas. Using this technology as an accommodation, I was able to pass my 6th grade math. Now, I still struggled, but at least the teachers could pass me with a C for showing my competency. I actually ended up using the AlphaSmart all the way through college algebra. Typing was the only accommodation I got through middle school and high school. This unnamed shadow is still with me and still holding back my handwriting and social interactions. Finally, the last week of high school came. I was excited to graduate. I had shot myself in the foot earlier by doing my Eagle Scout project the week before. But I was also able to see a specialist for an autism diagnosis. The last week with high school as a senior, I was buzzing with everything that was happening. My unnamed shadow finally got an introduction. Stanley, you have autism with dysgraphia and dyscalculia. I had heard of autism, but I had to look up dysgraphia and dyscalculia. And when I finally got my diagnosis, it all finally made sense. The social misunderstandings, the handwriting, the math issues, the unnamed shadow had a reason. Even better, I found out I was not alone. A couple weeks after my graduation, Eagle Project, and diagnosis, I was at community college applying to start classes. Only instead of doing the application and some pretest, I was actually on the college network to research autism. It turns out the diagnosis was key to a whole new world of people in support. Where before I was isolated, finding the autism community was amazing. Since then, I've found support and friendship with others in the community. My unnamed shadow is still around me, but now others know about it and know how to support it. Having an autism diagnosis has shown me the strength that our community has. We can also understand our neurodiversity and be with others who have their own unnamed shadow. Neurodivergence can be a blessing or a curse, but it all depends on the environment you're in. As a child, I've felt my unnamed shadow hid me from the world. But with a proper diagnosis and support, I could say that I've thrived. The nerdy parts of undiagnosed autism that socially isolated me in school, I now use as a professional 3D printer. By finding the autism community, I found a wellspring of support and strength that I needed to thrive. I now live independently on my own and work with great coworkers and have gainful employment. If you're struggling, know that you're not alone. Things did improve when I went to high school. I ended up in a private parochial school where none of my old classmates followed me. This is where a fresh start in a strict parochial school with a dress code and demerit card system. While this may seem like an odd place for someone with autism, for me it was an absolute strength. The rigorous curriculum and strict discipline standards were laid out on a card every student had to carry in their wallet. We could get JUG or Justice Under God when we hadn't, which was an hour's after school labor, if there was a discipline issue. And because of that, I never had any peers try and bully me or insult me or try and screw around with me. And I was actually really accepted there as the cool, geeky, nerdy student who ended up actually helping a lot of my classmates pass science. Hi, I'm Stan Baldwin. I'm autistic adult that is currently living on my own. My official diagnosis is nonverbal learning disorder, which is now under the autism spectrum. It's also comorbid with dysgraphia, which is a handwriting issue, and dyscalculia, a math disorder. I was a STEM teacher for 10 years before pivoting into 3D printing professionally. I have a bachelor's in environmental science and a master's in curriculum instruction from University of Colorado, Denver. So for the first question, can you share a story about a moment when you discovered strengths or beauty in what others might see as flaws in your neurodivergence? Growing up, I had an unnamed shadow. It always seemed to hold me back in social situations and made body language and sarcasm difficult to recognize. This unnamed shadow interfered with handwriting and math, and I was bullied daily at school. About once a month, like clockwork, I'd have a meltdown and the unnamed shadow would just explode. I was suspended for the bus for a couple fights, and I was known for having fights as well in the gym, playground, and even the classrooms. The whole time, this unnamed shadow made me feel alone and isolated from my peers. It was a feeling that followed me through high school. I thought that whatever was different about me, whatever this unnamed shadow was, I felt I was the only one in the world with it. This unnamed shadow seemed to be attached to me in odd ways. I was in a gifted and talented program in school, and I aced science and history class. I loved doing complex science projects like making plastic out of milk, or using the early dial-up internet at the school to research topics. And being a tech nerd at the time didn't help me with my social standing at the school at all. Because in spite of this, I still ate lunch at the reject table in the back corner at the cafeteria with all the other loners and losers. I think I came up with the unnamed shadow in 3rd grade. A strength of neurodiversity could be self-awareness. I remember coming up with this name of the unnamed shadow in a 3rd grade English class. A girl had said something sarcastic to me, and of course I took it literally. When I answered her with a straight face, she sneered and said, "Stan, you're weird." But for a 3rd grader, that was the kiss of social death. While the class was filling out English worksheets, I sat in my chair having an internal discussion about how I was weird. And after compiling all my experiences at that point, I could see that I didn't understand my classmates. And I was not interacting with them in a way they appreciated. I thought my classmates liked astronauts and science like I did, but how could I care about their pop music or basketball when music was okay in the 1990s, but basketball was just... And with the strict discipline and clear rules laid out for every student, I did not get into a single fight in high school. It turns out that the changing environment was what I needed to thrive. I actually spent all 4 years of high school recovering from the bullying that I experienced in middle and elementary school. But at the same time, I didn't have a formal diagnosis. And my unnamed shadow did seem to calm down a bit because I was able to make some friends and I joined choir in the fencing team.
Hi, my name is Edie, and I'm a senior in high school, and I'm neurodivergent, disabled, and queer. I'm also a community organizer and activist. One initiative I like to do as a community organizer is bring people together to make cards for kids in hospitals. The cards can either have a simple message like "you are loved" or a drawing, or both, but regardless of how artistic it is, it brings so much joy to a child in the hospital. We do them at fairs, festivals, and more. I have NVLD, ADHD, autism, dyspraxia, amongst other disabilities. And one thing I want people to know is that I feel like a lot of people think neurodivergent neurodivergent is a bad thing, but I want people to know there's also good things about it. Like, we can be very creative. Like, for instance, if we do something about our passions, like, for instance, I'm very good at community organizing, I feel like bringing people together is one of my strengths, but I'm not so good at math or science. So that's an example. Like, if someone's good at, for instance, cooking, they might be really good at making dishes. But if they're not so good at English, they might not be good at writing stuff, and that's okay. I also want people to know that I think they should stop using harmful language, such as the R word or SPED. For those that don't know, in high schools and schools, people tend to throw around SPED and the R word so much, like an insult. And I want people to know, regardless of what intent you're using it in, even if you're just trying to joke, it is still incredibly harmful. And instead of that, I think we should start using kind language and stop using slurs. Or, like, you could say you are loved to give a compliment to someone, but I think we should stop telling someone they're an R or a SPED, because people are genuinely trying their best. Because being neurodivergent can be hard, because we are living in a neurotypical society that's not made for us. So next time you see a neurodivergent person, instead of being so quick to tell them they're SPED or the R, try saying something like, "You're doing great," or "I see you," or just say hello. No need for negative language.
Hopefully what you can do with these episodes on this podcast, Living with Invisible Learning Challenge, I would like to challenge you to journal about the episodes and just see what you learn from them. Or you can share about the episodes with your friends and family and see what they can learn from them. And as always, I will post the links to the articles that I use in the description of the podcast. And please let me know if you know somebody who you think would want to be interviewed on this podcast, or if you yourself would want to be interviewed. Please email me. I have my email on my website, and I also have it pretty much pretty accessible on Facebook and Instagram through messaging as well. So you can get in contact with me in those ways.